You've probably heard about the Canadian dream, right? A land of endless opportunities, free healthcare, and a melting pot of cultures. But is the Canadian dream all it's cracked up to be? Spoiler alert, not really. As it turns out, a closer examination of the current situation in Canada reveals a different story altogether. Today, we will dive into some of the issues that often get swept under the rug, like high taxes, immigration challenges, work problems, expensive housing, and yes, even healthcare. From being one of the most sought-after countries to immigrate to now a land where many struggle to make ends meet, this is the untold truth about the Canadian dream. In the late 1970s, young Canadians entering the workforce enjoyed average hourly earnings that peaked at over $24, adjusted for inflation. Fast forward to today, and the cost of living has surged, making it increasingly difficult for young people to achieve the same standard of living as their parents. Historical inflation rates reveal a changing economic landscape. While Canada has generally followed a global trend of decreasing inflation rates since 2011, the rate has been on the rise recently, hitting a three-decade high in 2023. This inflation directly impacts the affordability of essential goods and services and the buying power of Canadians around the world. It all really started when the pandemic hit the world. Thanks to global and domestic factors such as labor shortage, shipping issues, and weak policies, the cost of living in Canada surged, with inflation hitting a three-decade high in April this year. This rise in inflation has directly impacted the cost of groceries. A recent study found that nearly 1 in 4 Canadians is buying less and hunting for bargains due to the rising cost of food. More than half of Canadians report that they can't keep up with the rising cost of living, and 78% blame grocers for soaring food prices. This sentiment reflects a broader concern about the affordability of basic necessities. What's worse is that even with this known, according to a new report, the cost of groceries in Canada is expected to continue rising in 2023, following a year that saw food prices climb by numbers not seen in decades. At this point, you would think that Canada would offer some help to its struggling middle and lower class citizens. Yet, the tax reality is only getting worse. In Canada, the personal income tax rates are among the highest compared to other developed nations. This high tax burden is not limited to the upper echelons of income earners, but extends to middle-income families. Although the tax rates have been adjusted this year to account for inflation, the past 2 years have been marginal in putting money back into Canadian pockets. In addition, a slew of new tax measures offers confusing results. For instance, while new tax incentives have been introduced for home buyers like the FHSA account, a separate tax has been levied on non-resident property owners, complicating the investment landscape. This brings us to one of the most important topics of today's video: the Canadian housing market. Particularly in cities like Vancouver and Toronto, the housing market is nearly impossible for a middle-class person to get into. These cities are considered to be among some of the most expensive globally. The average home price in Greater Vancouver for July 2023 was $1,270,664. To put that into perspective, you would need to make at least $235,650 a year to buy a home. That's not even close to the average Canadian income of $70,000 per year, leading many Canadians to creative alternatives such as buying and renting out portions of their homes to make ends meet. This escalation in housing costs poses a significant barrier to home ownership, a cornerstone of the so-called Canadian dream. Now, just imagine the challenges an immigrant faces today. The once dreamy land provided comfortable positions and living standards comparable to the US. Still, Canada is often portrayed as a haven for immigrants, offering abundant opportunities for employment and social integration. However, the reality is far from this narrative. Many immigrants face significant challenges in finding employment that aligns with their skills and experience. The struggle to secure suitable work often leads to underemployment or even unemployment, affecting immigrant families' economic stability. Moreover, certain categories of immigrants, such as refugees, are more susceptible to social risks, including civil disorder and limited community support. These vulnerabilities are often overlooked in the broader discussion about the benefits of Canadian multiculturalism. To make matters worse for immigrants, recent years have also seen a shift in public sentiment towards immigration. Despite Canada's historical openness to immigrants, there is growing skepticism and concern about the impact of immigration on social and economic structures. This comes as no surprise, considering the woes many Canadians already feel regarding competition in the housing market. To make matters worse, the Canadian labor market faces a significant shortage in critical areas such as construction, affecting businesses across various sectors. Nearly two-thirds of businesses with 20 or more employees anticipated labor shortages in 2022 as a major obstacle. This shortage not only hinders business growth, but also poses challenges for economic development at large. Now, the one thing Canada did have going for it was its healthcare. This was true up until recent years. One of the most pressing challenges facing Canada's healthcare system is the acute shortage of medical professionals, particularly doctors and nurses. Despite the country's reputation for universal healthcare, the system is strained by the lack of sufficient healthcare providers. Interestingly, hundreds of qualified Canadian physicians who have received training abroad find themselves unable to practice in Canada due to stringent accreditation processes and other bureaucratic hurdles. This not only exacerbates the existing shortage, but also raises questions about the system's efficiency in utilizing available human resources. The shortage is further highlighted by the job vacancy rate in healthcare, which surged to 5.8% by the second quarter of 2022. This rate indicates a significant gap between the demand for and supply of medical professionals. The high vacancy rate affects the quality of healthcare services and places additional stress on existing healthcare providers, leading to burnout and decreased productivity. The nursing shortage, in particular, has reached critical levels, affecting both acute care settings and long-term care facilities. Experts suggest that strategic planning, including financial incentives and streamlined accreditation processes, is urgently needed to attract and retain healthcare professionals. In light of the various challenges we've discussed, from high taxes and complex immigration issues to labor shortages, expensive housing, and a strained healthcare system, it's clear that the Canadian dream is not as ideal as it's often portrayed. These systemic issues raise serious questions about the quality of life in Canada and the sustainability of its social and economic structures. If you found this information valuable and wish to stay updated on similar topics, please consider subscribing to our channel for more insightful content.